Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Britton. I'm the author of Reconnecting Workspaces, and I'm also the CEO of Potentials Realized, Canadian-based coaching, training, and consulting firm that's won multiple awards for our interactive, experientially based coach training work. Always a pleasure to be with you. It is September the 13th, 2021, and we are back to work. Many places have gone back to work as of the last week. Many schools have reopened, as have many pools. So I was able to get my first swim in for the last 18 months. If you had met me a couple of years ago, you would know that I was an avid swimmer. That had to change during the pandemic as pools were closed. But luckily, at least for right now, I was able to get back to my fall routine of swimming multiple times every week. So that's apropos. Why I'm sharing it is because today's topic is back to work, routines, habits, and practices. And if we look out at the lay of the land, September 13th, there are organizations that have gone back into the office. There are also many organizations that have not gone back to the office. Many are moving into a hybrid space as well, where people are going into maybe working couple days a week if space and requirements allow. So I thought it would be apropos a couple months ago to set today's call for some discussion around routines, habits, and practices. And if you have a copy of Reconnecting Workspaces, you're going to want to zoom into a couple of different chapters. The one on habits, on time effectiveness, which is towards the end of the book, as well as chapter 3 and 4, which go into team culture. We are creatures of habit, and our brains like certainty. This is where routines, habits, and practices become so critical. They actually can create a sense of safety, of connection, and of belonging in an environment which may appear and may actually be ever changing. So that's the context for today. Of course, I am Jennifer Britton. I am the author of 6 books, with my 7th book soon to be released. So later this month, in September 2021, I will be releasing the first of the next in the series of Reconnecting Workspaces. And it's going to be the 90-day guide to success, which is a pretty robust 90-day journey in the realm of areas to focus on as you get onboarded or reboard into the virtual, remote, and hybrid space. For those that appreciate a quarterly focus, the 90-day guide will actually be a wonderful self-primer to help you give a daily focus around a topic of interest. So do stay tuned, more on that coming up. But today's conversation with routines, habits, and practices really gets you thinking about what supports you to do your best work. And this was a conversation sparker we shared last week at our Remote Pathways community call. If you've never heard of Remote Pathways, it is the podcast that I've been co-hosting for the last 2 years. We're moving into season 3, and every year we produce about 20 different episodes. Our focus has historically been on the remote road and the people, practices, and processes to exceptional remote work. In the last year, we've started talking about remote adventures on the hybrid highway. And that really dovetails into my recent TED Talk from August 2021, where I talked about the virtual, remote, and hybrid checklist. And that checklist has been many years in the making. If you've been following along over at remotepathways.com, do check out the blog, because for 2020, I was blogging weekly on topics related to remote work. And one that I'm pulling on from today is known as the Back to Work checklist for the remote space. So really be thinking about how you might be able to zoom into some of the basics, right? I think this is where September and January are great months of the year where we get to go back to the basics. If you are doing some one-on-ones or even team meetings right now, it's useful to think about your roles and goals. It's useful to revisit your work and your key tasks and your success measures. It's really important to build in some time around your key activities and relationships, as well as maybe setting up your office. Key case in point, over the weekend, we changed internet service providers. Can't say how happy I am to have fiber optic internet. It really is a game changer. Now that did require some big changes into a certain part of the office, took several hours while that was being installed, but I look across the office and I am so pleased to see that. So what's going to help you set up more effectively, more efficiently in your office space right now? And that's going to take you perhaps into some very practical things, as well as potentially some systems areas. With the month of September, it is an opportunity for new starts. And in light of today's topic of habits, routines, and practices, really be thinking about what supports you to do your best work. I want to share with you a couple of things from several of the chapters. Again, we're zooming into chapters 3, 4, as well as the teamwork practices chapter and the leadership practices chapter. And if you haven't picked up a copy of Reconnecting Workspaces, head on over to your local Amazon. It is really a steal of a deal at $30, and you will get myths, practices, and team tools in 20 different areas for remote work, from delegation to managing conflict, from looking at how we hold hybrid meetings to looking at how do we coach and mentor in this space. It's going to give you some very robust practical tips. And as an author, I love hearing how people are using this material. So today we're going to look at routines, practices, and habits, 3 very different areas. And I'd like you first to think about the routines, the things in your day that allow you to do your best work. What are the things you want to do on a regular basis? So maybe there's an early morning routine that you have. Maybe there's an end of day routine. Maybe there's a physical routine that you want to employ. As I started by saying at the start of the call, I have really enjoyed today, even though it's a busy day, because I got back to the pool. That hour and 10 minutes of time is so worth me getting in and out of this office very quickly so that I can keep running. Because I know that in terms of routines, things are very busy. We have lots of people to support and serve. And as a routine, I need that time in the pool to clear my head, to think about what's really a priority. As Jan Stanley shared in her TED Talk a few years ago, routines provide stability and mutability. And as our environment changes, routines can adapt. Think about the routines that have adapted for you in this last 18 months of the pandemic, and also think about the routines that you might be returning to. I have to say, being a long-standing swimmer who used to be in the pool multiple, like up to 6 days a week, it was really wonderful and heartwarming to step into one of our local community pools today and see friends, I would call them friends, and acquaintances I hadn't seen for a long time. Those routines, you could see people's relief on their faces to be able to come back to a thing that really gets us all grounded. And while this may not last forever through the winter months, I'm hopeful that for now we're going to be able to enjoy it. So on a personal level, as well as professional level, what are the routines that are going to help you thrive and do your best work? Another example is doing things like double checking. Maybe there is a practice or a routine of just, always passing on key communications to a colleague before it goes out the door. Another routine or a practice, and I'm sort of putting these two together, I do see routine as something that we're doing regularly every day. So in my work, certainly there are times of day when I undertake regular tasks. Like I have a routine and a habit of meeting with one of my virtual assistants every week, Monday morning at 5:30 a.m. Eastern. While that might not be for everyone, it's a really key part of the week, that half an hour where we spend together talking about priorities, catching up on different activities, and really looking at things that I know if I left it to later in the day would not happen. So routines, what are your routines? What are the things that are going to help you continue to run, continue to serve, continue to impact others in your work? Take a moment, if you're listening to this as a recording, and note that down for yourself before you move on. Now, going hand in hand with routines are habits, and habits are a little bit different. Again, habits are key in an ever-changing environment. These, I like to define habits as the things we unconsciously do that support us in today's frenetic business context. And I'm a big proponent for creating habits in our environment. So I might have a habit of always, clearing my inbox, or I might have a habit. Actually, one of my habits is doing 15 minutes of writing a day. And I do it in bites, right? A lot of people say, how do you write so much? And actually, it's because it's grounded in a habit of daily steps plus consistent action, creating momentum. I undertake my passion projects in the margins of my life. As many of you know, I'm a busy business owner, I'm a mom, I'm now a caretaker of my two parents, and it can sometimes feel overwhelming, but I know that if I did not find time for the things that give me joy, I wouldn't be as satisfied. And so habits, the habit of writing for 15 minutes a day is truly a habit. If I don't do it, I know that something's missing. It's like the habit of exercise in my world. And if you go back and watch past calls, you'll see what I mean, right? It's really key that I'm always at my prime. So think for yourself about the habits that are helping you, as well as maybe the habits that are getting in the way. And here's a habit I'll feel comfortable sharing. It's a personal habit, but last winter, I really got into some bad eating habits. My son is the first one to remind me about this somehow, and I don't know, but anyways, it's just to say that every week I'd buy a box of donuts on a Friday night as I went to pick up medication for my parents. It was just as easy to get their medication and then just go buy 4 chocolate donuts. And while it wasn't bad if I just did that once, I think over time it was adding in, really like calories I did not need in an environment where I could not be as active. So as I stripped out some of that sugar over the summer, I was like, what was I doing? And I started to like sort of decode what had led to that. And to me, it was a little treat for spending, time on the end of a busy week going to a pharmacy when usually it was not ready. It was like my way of treating myself. So I wouldn't put that in the bucket of habits that were helping me. In fact, it was a habit that was hindering me. It felt good in the moment, but definitely was not good over time. So habits, sometimes we need to get out of our environment in order to really see what habits are. And that's where I'm so appreciative every summer that I get to work remote out of Muskoka. If you've been following the calls, you'll notice that yes, the background is different and I'm back at my home office. And it's really important that I have that annual reset to be able to sort of look at what is important and what was changing. So habits are key in an ever-changing environment. They are the things we unconsciously do. And because they're unconscious, it gives us more brain space as well. There's just more space to focus on other things. So I do have a habit of getting up every day, a few minutes after 5. Even throughout the summer, I found that I was naturally waking up at that time. And that does help me get so much done. And again, as a driver personality type, if you know the disc, it is really important that I do get things done. It's what fuels me. It's what I value. It's what makes me happy. But my habit is early to bed, early to rise. And that was something that has been shaped over many years of work. Now, we can also have habits in our teams. And one thing that I'd like you to think about is, what are the habits on your team level? What are the practices? And also, what are the routines? Because if teams are coming together in different ways, we want to be thinking about how we keep things rolling through perhaps an all remote, into a hybrid, maybe into an in-person realm. And there are a few habits that are going to keep teams rolling, and there are 4 that I mentioned in Reconnecting Workspaces. Let's see if I can open up the book. And this comes from chapter 4, I believe, where I highlight these 4 different areas. Habits for teams in terms of keeping connected, so that it actually is a habit. It's something that the team has committed to doing, and it's something that the team really, if it's not there, is missing it. So what are the habits that you're doing for keeping connected? Some teams might be engaged in daily huddles. Others might have a social event every week. Some of you may have annual practices as well. So page 148, I should just read my own slides and then I'd find it. There we go. The next one that I want to get really into as we think about this is, what can it look like to keep connected? So keeping connected is not just through our meetings. as I share on page 149, it's maybe post information, let other people know what's on the go, whether you're using a Slack channel, an intranet, or other. It may be having team buddies, so keeping connected not just with the whole team, but with parts of the team. And that takes us to also building in some skills for our team partners. So listening, questioning, curiosity, assumption busting, etc. We want to make sure that we are then doing that busting of assumptions. And that is habit 4. As I've said here, the final habit virtual, remote, and hybrid teams will want to be aware of is that of busting assumptions. There are many assumptions we can hold as leaders and team members. Assumptions are important to identify as not everyone sees the world with the same eyes. In a remote team, our context and what's outside our window can look completely different. Busting through assumptions is critical for global teams today. And it's not just about busting those assumptions, it's actually about identifying the assumptions. And it's about naming them and exploring them and seeing how it helps and how it may hinder. A couple of assumptions that team members may make, and I'm just going to mention a few that I write about on page 152. Everyone is going to love working remotely. That is an assumption. An assumption of working as a virtual leader is just like it being a face-to-face leader. Or an assumption of the way I work is how everyone else will want to work. This is something that we want to be getting better at as a habit of naming and claiming and owning the assumptions that we make. If they are visible, it helps us with avoiding conflict. It helps us with really owning our bias. It helps us with owning what is true and what is not true in our realm. And notice in a remote or hybrid world, what is true for one member may not be true for the other. So that takes us to habit 3. I'm working backwards, and that is the one of knowing and not knowing. And I really love the writing and work of Hal Gregerson of MIT, an author of Questions Are the Answer. He talks about the importance of being comfortable in not knowing what we don't know. As I write on page 152 of Reconnecting Workspaces, as we become more experienced and senior in a role, it may be an instance where issues are not being raised with us. Learning to cultivate questioning within our team is as important as part of breaking this cycle. Part of the challenge of remote work is learning to be comfortable with not knowing. It is not possible to know everything in a remote space, given that we can only see what is on our screen. We're not seeing what's happening outside. As I write, questions provide the pathway into the coaching conversation so that we can empower those we are in dialogue with to glean insights. It is often through the collective collaboration that we get the details and resources we need in order to solve problems. So there is a habit of being okay with knowing and not knowing. And finally, a habit of ongoing pulse checks and evaluation. I think the agile space is really good with this in terms of, we used to call them status updates. Now it's like a retrospective or a daily huddle or a daily stand-up. And so, what is working for the team, what's not working, what processes could be reshaped, what's one thing we could be doing differently to improve our results or relationships, and what could we stop doing, or what needs an immediate change right now. This is the question space that I like to be looking at as I do a pulse check, a retrospective, or even just a daily touch base. It is key that we do build in time for this. So there's been a lot in the realm of habits. Definitely check out books like Atomic Habits from James Clear. Check out other resources as well. And our habits are going to shape our practices. So our habits are those unconscious things, but they often shape the things that we do. So we can have team practices, we can have relationship building practices like making a point of doing an outreach every week with a new team member. Maybe a relationship building practice is attending a bi-weekly networking event. And there may be practices that we have for results, like always getting a second set of eyes. Just a reminder that high-performing teams have solid relationships and are focused on results. We always want to look at this framework of results plus relationships equals high performance. So that's what I wanted to share today. If you haven't picked up a copy of Reconnecting Workspaces, check it out because I go through principles and myths, team tools and brain tips, 6 questions, and reconnecting tips as well from 20 different areas, from project management to presentations. team practices to building a robust team culture, leadership to mentoring and coaching. There's a lot in Reconnecting Workspaces that I think you are going to enjoy because we focus on both results and relationships. So the book will be segmented out with more books on the go, which bring to life the adventures of the digital dozen. If you've been following along at the Remote Pathways podcast, you've already seen some of their adventures, but I'm super excited to be bringing more to you in the coming weeks in the 90-day guide to success, pathways to thrive in the virtual, remote, and hybrid space. It's part of the Reconnecting Workspaces series, which ultimately is planned to be a series of 12 books. So check out the next one, the 90-day guide to success. It's going to be available on Amazon through the different Amazons all over the world at the end of September 2021. And it really is a workbook, self-guided 90-day guide. I'm looking forward to creating some experiential processes around that. I hope that you're going to join me for that. So do stay tuned. You can find more at reconnectingworkspaces.com. You can also find out our past Reconnecting Workspaces calls, including the 5 engagement levers, team tools, and results and relationships. So if you haven't picked up a book flyer, head on over to bit.ly/RW book flyer. The future of work is hybrid. Are you ready? Are you ready to run with us? And if you are, I hope that you'll join us on these regular calls. Join us for an upcoming book call. I will be releasing the fall schedule momentarily, but we have one more on September 20th. It will either be at 10 a.m. Eastern or like today's call at 1:30. And with that, I look forward to continuing to support you. Hope that you will download the Reconnecting Workspaces bookmark. If you can't find it, you can download one at reconnectingworkspaces.com. Just hover in the upper hand or email me with your mailing address, and I'd be happy to pop it in the mail. If you haven't checked out my TEDx talk, look it up. Our philosophy is all about always learning, strong process, and team connections. It's about engaging regularly and providing that digital delivery. And with that, I'm Jennifer Britton. I want to wish you a great day. Let us come together. I'm starting this fall series of Reconnecting Workspaces coach certification. And with that, we'll see you soon. So have a good one, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.